So I got involved just kind of, as I usually do, walking up to someone and saying, I like what you're doing, I want to do it with you. That's how actually all my projects started. Canadaland, Wyrd Distro. I started dating my boyfriend because I was like, I really like your concert series, I want to get involved. So basically I just forced myself upon people and then they're stuck with me. My name is Katie Jensen and I am an audio producer.
Welcome to Her Name Is,
a podcast about creative women you need to know.
I'm Jenny Tang.
And I'm Emily Milling.
We've combed the city of Toronto to find some of the most talented and inspiring women working in creative industries.
Every other week, we will tell you one of their stories.
We want to share their experiences with other amazing women that are looking for inspiration to do the same.
This week, we talked to Katie Jensen, an audio producer at Canadaland. Well, she's not just an audio producer. On top of working at Canadaland, a crowdfunded news site and podcast, she writes for the blogs Wyrd Canada and Music Between Friends. She hosts Indielicious, a weekly college radio show about indie music. She volunteers at Wyrd Distro, a not-for-profit record distribution company, and she co-organizes Feast in the East, a monthly series that features music, food, and art.
I have a problem with sitting still, and I find it very hard to relax. So it's easier for me to fill my downtime with side projects rather than going on vacation or reading a book or just lying down or taking a nap. I find it easier to just get involved with a bunch of different things because I would rather get something done all the time and then feel, even if I haven't had a great day at work, at least I've gotten something done in some other area of my life. And I really want to make a positive impact on the projects I'm involved in. And so I take on as much as I can because I can take it on.
Growing up, her life revolved around music, art, and storytelling. And it involved an unlikely girl that we're all familiar with.
Oh, I played Barbies until like an embarrassingly old age. Probably played Barbies while some of my peers were having sex. And I love to dress up. I love to make music videos with them. I made a lot of mixtapes. I had a portable recorder with a little tiny cassettes, so I would record that a lot and make tiny radio documentaries and programs and dramas. I've been playing music for as long as I can remember. There are photos of me as a toddler with instruments. There are videos of me playing instruments naked. I don't know why my parents thought that was funny. And I started taking formal piano lessons when I was 6, so from there I continued to play in high school, and then I picked up other instruments and joined concert bands and then auditioned for music in university. So I always thought, yeah, maybe I'll compose orchestral scores or at least contemporary classical music, which I'm very fascinated by, but I ended up doing other things instead. And I don't think, I can always do that. It's not like I've closed the door on that. It's just that I'm not doing it right now. And I think at some point I'll probably dabble with that. And they'll probably be really primitive and lame, but they will exist.
If she does release an album, we hope it includes this amazing little sequencer.
So what it does, it's a really primitive instrument. I think it would have probably, I'm guessing 83. So it actually, okay. It has 2 settings. There's a vibrato and there's no vibrato. And what it does that is very interesting is that if I were to record it just like this, you would think that the playback would be the same in terms of the tempo and the spacing of the notes, but because it is a weird primitive thing, it goes like this. So if you want to record the spaces, there's a tiny little button here that adds pauses between the notes. So if you want to play that exact melody, it would be this. I think. Let's see. No. But you get the idea. It's pretty fun though, because you can just basically do stuff like this. And then this is what it'll do. Pretty cool.
After high school, Katie attended McMaster University in Hamilton, where she majored in science and minored in music, and of course, got involved with a handful of extracurricular activities.
When I was in school, I dabbled in a lot of different things. I took some English classes, some French classes, some communication studies, this and that, and I really loved getting involved in a lot of extracurriculars. I was on an improv team. I was a founding member of an improv troupe. I did plays. I was in a choir. Like, I did a lot of stuff. And one of the things that I never got tired of doing was when I was in third year, I was looking at, there was an open atrium broadcast from our community and college radio station. So our community station, 93.3 CFMU, was having their annual broadcast from the huge student atrium. And I just thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to just go on the radio and play whatever music? And, you know, I was just starting to get into indie music at that time. It was kind of like the golden age of indie music as well. And I applied and I said, I want to play this music and I want it to be some Canadian, like a good chunk of Canadian music, and here are the bands that I would play on my show. And I filled out this application form, put it in this stack, and it got chosen. So I did that, loved it, and even though other people I knew kind of gave up their shows, I never did. I always kept doing it through the summer when I could, and even when I graduated, I still did it remotely, and I came back to the studio to record when I could. And it also, doing it remotely gave me a lot of skills in different audio programs. So I got used to putting together sound packs and did a little voiceover work for the studio, for the station, and just kind of decided, oh yeah, this seems right. All I do is listen to music in my free time. Why not just do it? And if it doesn't work out, okay, at least I'm not working that boring job anymore, right? And sometimes when I look at the numbers and I think, why? Why are the numbers going down when I like the shows more? It's inversely proportionate. Is it because the music is not accessible enough? Do I even care? Who am I making this for? Am I making it to serve myself? And then I just kind of think, okay, I am putting this together because I genuinely love this music. I like listening to the mixes. Ultimately, I'm making them for myself so that when I'm wandering around Toronto, I have a soundtrack that's always changing. I don't even know how many podcasts I've made. I think it's close to 300 now. It's insane. And some days it's frustrating when I see, why are only 30 people listening to this mix? It's fantastic. These bands deserve more. And oh my God, I just spent 5 hours working on this. Ugh, but it is totally worth it. I listen to I hear what the bands have to say, and they're really nice people, and it's great to be able to showcase what's happening in other parts of Canada. And the more that I evolve, the more I want to give back to the community and really support the musicians who make the music.
After graduation, instead of pursuing science or music, she got a job in the financial district. But after 3 years of hating her job, she made the decision to quit and attended Humber College for a postgraduate degree in radio broadcasting. It wasn't long until she put herself on the radar of Canadaland's Jessie Brown.
So everyone else was looking for internships at commercial radio stations or at CBC. I applied for an internship at CBC, didn't get it. That was totally fine. But I decided to reach out to Canadaland, to Jessie Brown, and I wrote him a long email about what I liked, what I didn't like, what episodes I thought were important and why. And he basically said, meet me in a week, bring me some story ideas. And I interviewed with him. It was a very interesting interview. The next day I emailed him to thank him, and he said, when can you start? So I started a day later. I just started producing episodes like the day. My very first day, Jessie was like, hey, we have this interview tape with Sun News with 2 guests and me. Do you want to cut it and show it to me in a week? And if it's good, we'll put it on the show. And if it's not, I'll redo it. It's like, okay, sure. So I did it, and it aired as it did. So, and then after that, I just started doing every episode. I can say very confidently that it has been at least 9 months, at least a pregnancy's length, and there is not a single day where I don't feel, there are frustrations for sure, but I never feel like I should not be in this industry. I want to go back to whatever else I was doing before. I decided to apply to Canadaland because at first, I've told Jessie this, so I feel okay saying it, but the first time I listened to Canadaland, I was like, oh, this is not interesting to me. But it's because I listened to, I'm not going to tell you which episode. There's just an episode or two that I listened to that I was just like, this is boring. And then the big thing happened, which doesn't need to be talked about anymore. And then the podcast started getting more attention, and the guests started coming in, and the content got more interesting. And then Shortcuts happened, and Shortcuts was really fascinating. I love Shortcuts. The turnaround for that is insane. We're still sometimes thinking of the topics the morning of. We record on Wednesdays at 3 p.m., and then I usually turn the episode around sometimes as soon as 7 or 8. So to get all that done, executed, is just, I love it. I love doing that. So I chose Canadaland mostly because I wanted to see if I could do it. Because one of my classmates in college had said that he had met Jesse at a coffee shop, and Jesse was really intimidating. And I thought, well, no one's more intimidating than I am. So I want to see if I can intimidate him. So I did. I think I did. I hope I did. And when I interviewed with him, I just got the sense that it was like the right place. Like, this interview, I came up with 9 pitches. He rejected all of them. But it was funny because a few months later, he used a few of them. So, criticism, I'm just like, whatever, criticize my work, I don't care. I just got rejected for a pitch to the Toast this morning. I don't care if my stuff gets rejected. I used to be like, oh my God, what am I thinking? Oh, I'm no good. I'm just no good at anything if someone rejects me. But now I'm like, whatever, I'm turning 28 next year. I don't give a fuck. You can reject me. I'll just keep doing whatever I do. I never clued into the fact that when I was in high school, one of my best friends and I were, we used to draw together and write fan fiction together, and she drew like a comic once where I was a doctor, she was a journalist, and I was like, oh, why would you want to be a journalist? Such a boring job. They seem like vultures. They seem like leeches. They're really just like not interesting to me. And I don't know why I wasn't thinking about who I am and how much of a gossip I am, how curious I am, how obnoxious I am, and how much I love multimedia. I'm literally the most obnoxious person I know. And I make a great journalist for that. In terms of how I feel about being part of a project like this, insanely proud. Like, crazy proud. Everything is worth it. When I am in the office and I have to order a pizza because I'm working late, it is 100% worth it. I just love my job so much, like crazy. So much that I will lose sleep over it, that I will not eat over it, that I will come in anytime anyone needs me. I will bend over backwards for this job and the people I work with. I think before I started at Canadaland, I was reading one paper. I was reading the Globe. God, that probably sounds really bad, but I was reading the Globe, and I couldn't tell you who my MP was, and I couldn't say who members of the Senate were. I probably didn't know who the CEOs or the owners of each paper were. Probably couldn't name any small town paper names. I didn't know very much. It's like going to a party where you know one person and you're like, oh God, I just feel comfortable only talking to that one person. And then when I started to work at Canadaland, metaphorically, I felt like I knew more people at the party, and I felt like I could talk to more people. Now it feels like I'm more comfortable stating my opinion. I know where I stand on certain issues. And I think in general, before I would have probably opted out of talking to anyone, like just, you talk to your mom, you talk to your friends about what's going on in the world, what's going on in Canada. I probably would have just ducked out of that conversation and just gone to talk about something else. And now I'm the one who initiates those conversations because I think it's super interesting. And I want to hear what people have to say about, specific nuances of the day-to-day. And I'm on Twitter a lot more, and I'm participating in conversations, which sounds really lame and millennial of me, but I really, really feel more engaged now, and I think it's because I have to be for my job. I have to know what's going on. I love that we get to get people excited about news again. And I love hearing from the people who listen to the show. I get to talk with our patrons, our sponsors of the show, just to say, hey, I'm sending you a t-shirt. Hey, how's it going? Hey, your credit card's declined. And always I just get the, oh, I fixed that. Or I'm so excited. And here's a picture of me wearing it. And oh my God, you and Jesse are doing such great work. So I get all the great stuff. Like all my job is nothing but positive, which is great because my ego just becomes so big and twisted. So I like it from that perspective. And I love that people can remember certain things from the episodes and say, oh, I really liked this episode when this person said this thing. And sometimes we produce so many podcasts. We're on episode 110 as of Monday for the main show. And we're almost at 50 episodes of Shortcuts. So there's a lot of shows, and I can't even remember what happened in all of them. So for people to have that stick with them, that's why I love audio as a medium for transmitting information, because it's such more intimate and connected medium that you really feel as though it's kind of more personal and it's proximal to you, and for me at least, sticks more. When I was in university, I often used to record lecture notes, me reading my own lecture notes, because I thought, oh, if I'm listening to this, I'm more likely to retain the information, basically. So that's what I love about it, is that it's making people more excited about the country they live in, making people question what they read and what they hear and see, and making people feel engaged and feel like they have some advocacy and a fair and balanced voice.
In a country that's saturated with media conglomerates, it made perfect sense that she went with Canadaland and is pursuing its agenda to investigate and break stories that traditional media won't touch. Her dedication to Canadaland is certainly an extension of her love for things that are alternative and disruptive, including the art scene.
In high school, I was made fun of a lot for being a weirdo, and then in university it was kind of like, she's still too weird. But then when I graduated from university and I started working this job, it was like a straight white collar, neckties up to here, and I was just bizarre for wearing pants, for having a pixie cut, for having a ring up here. I was like basic stuff. And then I was like, you know what? I don't care. But what really changed that was I started getting involved with the local music scene, where there are truly weird people, and it's just a community where if you're more normal, that you're kind of like an odd man out, or an odd woman out, an odd person out. And I just kind of decided, all right, well, if I can go to a concert and get away with wearing whatever I want, basically, I guess I can kind of extend that to listening to whatever I want and eating whatever I want and saying whatever I want. I mean, I've always been pretty liberal with what I say, like off the cuff and sometimes insouciant, but I really felt that once I got integrated into the local music community, then I could really just be whatever I wanted to be. In my creative pursuits, it's genuinely that these people have interesting stories to tell, and they are doing really great things, fascinating things, making art I admire, making music I admire. So it's just easy to want to work with them and to learn from them. And I know a lot of people who are illustrators, printmakers, musicians who have interesting things to say. And I think people outside of the scene just look at artists and musicians and think, these people are dumb. They don't know what's going on in the real world. They don't pay taxes. But you would be surprised at how many artists and musicians I know who listen to podcasts and read the news. Most of the people who know who I am are artists, actually, who listen to podcasts while they're painting or drawing. And that's really nice. It's a nice surprise to talk to someone and they're not only a cool person because they're making great art and music, but they also know what I'm doing and they know I'm not a normal.
Katie wouldn't be a part of Canadaland and all of her side projects without her confidence, motivation, inability to sit still, and bulldogish personality. However, she admits that there are some weaknesses.
I think the biggest obstacle I had was not really knowing how to do things. Like, I'm the kind of person where I will say yes and then figure out the rest later. So I actually had an opportunity. I think I probably would have ended up at the CBC 4 years ago if I had really pushed it more. I was able to talk to some people at the CBC, go into CBC Radio 3, and just like talk to people right out of university. I didn't know what I was doing, really. I didn't know the opportunity that had been given to me at that point, and the people I met, I did not realize how big they were when I met them. And so I just thought, okay, well, I'll take my time, I'll give it some thought. And then I got offered this job that would help pay off my student debt. And I thought, well, I'll just work this for a little while and then I'll go back to radio. This door is still open. Little did I know that the door shuts pretty quickly after it's opened. And if you don't immediately pounce on that door, it will shut for good. But then you do not realize often that sometimes you don't act on something because it's just not the right time. For me, the reason I didn't pursue it at the time was probably because I wasn't ready. And I might have not had the emotional maturity at 21 or 22 or 23 or 24. And now I'm 27. And now I'm ready. And now I want it because now I know what I want. If I had known what I wanted back then, we wouldn't be having this conversation now, right? It takes me a little longer. I'm a late bloomer. I didn't have my first drink till I was 18. I didn't get my braces off for a long time. I didn't get boobs till yesterday, like really late bloomer. And I just think that if I had, the biggest barrier was me. But I think that's the same thing can be said for most people, right? A lot of people will procrastinate or indulge in bad habits, or they'll talk themselves out of something, or they'll be self-destructive. And it's really just because that's human nature to just destroy and create again. So I think that knowing that now and knowing my limitations helps for sure. But I definitely needed to fail a lot before I got here. I guess my personal philosophy is I can do that. Like, obviously I can do this. And you say I can't do this, I'm going to do it anyway. There have been a lot of people where I've butted heads with, especially in positions of authority, where they've said, you're not smart enough, you are not ready, you will never make it. I was told, in every single job I've had, there's been someone who's told me that I would never succeed in certain things. Like, I distinctly remember when I was 21, when I was quitting a job on my last day, a coworker who was slightly superior to me in the hierarchy said, you're never going to survive in corporate life. And I was like, cool, glad to see ya. See you later. And then I was there for 3 years. So I've always thought, you think I can't do something? I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it amazingly, and then I'm going to rub it in your face just by living well. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of proud in the sense that I will try and disprove any haters, but I really think that the best revenge is living well, and to show someone that you can do something even when they think or have doubts in you is really the easiest way to get one over them. I don't know if big publications are going to turn to podcasts as the next source of revenue. I have seen a lot of success with newsletters. Newsletter culture is big. The National Post was doing a newsletter, and it was amazing. And Jen Gerson was doing it. It was hilarious and very interesting. And that stopped pretty recently, out of nowhere. I don't know if podcasts are the future for digital outlets. I think Star Touch is the Toronto Star's answer to that question, and the proof is in the metrics, which are not great. I think that digital is going to have to try and find writers that matter, that are young and connected. I think the biggest mistake that the Toronto Star did was getting rid of the grid. It was a real shame that they got rid of it because it touched on food culture, art, music, politics, and they had some of the strongest editorial voices in alt news. So I think when people decide to kill something and then replace it with a shadow of a digital self, the readers aren't going to come back to that. I think I love talking about ambient music the most because it's like the poetry of music. It's more thoughtful and abstract and less tangible. Like, there are things that you can grip in music that it has like a 4/4 rhythm or percussion at all, or, instrumentation that's drawn from a certain era just based on the kind of feedback that is, used on the guitars or the keyboard. And I feel like ambient music is timeless and it's really great for being pensive. If something grabs me enough to say, I really want to write about this, I will write about it right away. And because I'm in the mood, I'm just captured and taken away by it. So I will pretty much drop everything and just like write how I feel. And often I'll try to create really visual, narrative kind of prose. I just try to create these mini stories that are standalone pieces that could be read with or without the music. But when they play with music, when you read them with music, it forms kind of like a little scenario in the reader's mind. I hope that when people read what I've written for Wyrd Canada, they won't feel like what I've written is the be-all and the end-all interpretation. So much of what music writing and music reviews are is kind of like an authoritative, this is the thing that is true about this instrumentation, and it is good or bad, and it is right or wrong, and this is my opinion. So I hope that when people look at my writing, they don't necessarily think I've made a hard and fast decision to pigeonhole that music, more just, oh, well, this is one interpretation of what could be happening in this. My biggest inspiration is a musician named Angel Olsen. She worked with Bonnie Prince Billy on her first album. She recorded her first album in her kitchen. She released her first album, limited edition, just because like when you're an artist and you're making your first pressing, there's no guarantee that anyone's going to like you because you have no reputation yet. And I had read, or I think I had heard a track of hers, and I was kind of in the mood. She sounds a bit like Sibel Bayer. So she released this record, and because it was in such limited quantities, I couldn't find it anywhere that wasn't exorbitant shipping to Canada. So it was too expensive for me. So I messaged her, I think on Tumblr. She got back to me and said, what's your address? I'll PayPal you. If you PayPal me, I'll just mail it to you. So she hand-mailed me one of her remaining copies with a Post-it note on it that had a little message for me. And I just thought, wow, she didn't have to do that. She could have just ignored me. She could have said, sorry, you're gonna have to pay this shipping. Her music is great. Like, it's so beautiful. She has a way with words. It's very amazing. I'm like me, I have a great way with words. The way she's able to capture heartbreak and sorrow. She takes simple guitar melodies and uses them in a way that's not conventional, and her voice is angelic. So she really inspires me. I feel relieved that I'm at a place where I feel so comfortable and proud of what I do. And I think it was worth it. It was really difficult to go back to school at 26 and sit through a full-time program when I was losing money. It was basically just flushing it down the toilet every single day. And having to go so far to get to school was something I was unfamiliar with. I had never been a commuting student, and I had always lived just off campus. And to go to Humber from where I live was sometimes 4 hours of traveling every day, and to do that 5 days a week sometimes felt very frustrating. But I think back to where I was a year ago, just starting the program, and I think, okay, it's already happened, and I'm in a good place, and I love what I do, so it doesn't matter how hard it was to get here, it was totally worth it. Well, it's my second career, so I'm hoping that I will not have a third for at least 5 years.
You can catch Katie on February 13th in Ottawa on a panel called Boombox, a conversation about change in the world of radio. She'll be sitting in with Nora Young from CBC's Spark and other media personalities, including Canadaland's Jesse Brown.
You can follow Katie at Katie Jensen and at MusicBTW Friends on Twitter. You can find links to all of our projects on our website.
If you are, or know of, a woman in the creative industry in Toronto, we'd love to meet you. Email us at info@hernameispodcast.com or get in touch through Facebook or Twitter. We can't wait to hear from you.
Sponsorship and partnership opportunities are available. If you're interested, send us an email at info@hernameispodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening and supporting the show.
You can support Her Name Is by following us on Twitter, liking us on Facebook, and rating and reviewing the podcast. That will help us find more listeners like you. You can contribute to the podcast at hernameispodcast.com.
This episode was produced and edited by us,
Emily Milling
and Jenny Tang. Music was written by Emily, and this podcast is the product of Can Make Productions.
Special thanks to everyone that supported us so far in creating this podcast, including Ben Donnelly, Justin DeClue, Cindy Milling, Seng Tang, and our furry friends George Michael, Milosh, and Godzilla.
Before we sign off, there's one more piece of advice Katie would like to share.
The biggest productivity tool I can give to any creative woman is to always have a notebook on you with a pen you love. Because if you don't have a pen you love, you'll never use your notebook. But if you have a pen that's like really nice flow to it, whether it's lined or not, whatever your thing is. The work to-do list is always getting changed. The personal to-do list always has like something dumb on it, like I have to oil my teak bed frame at some point. It's still on my to-do list, but at least it feels like I have some sort of control over what I'm doing.